Hi, Zach Perry here, the Fortune firm. I'm going to talk to you about the stock market. Now, that's a mystery to a lot of people. I think most people understand, you've seen that little graph. It goes up and down, but generally up. And I think most people understand that when you purchase stocks, you're investing in someone else's business. So when I buy Apple stock, I am actually giving Apple money, and Apple can go use that money to promote their business. And then if their business grows and that stock certificate I buy now goes up in value because their money or their company is worth more, then I can sell that for more and I've made a profit. So that's how stocks work, right? Now, for some reason, actually I know the reason, but in this company we have gotten into the habit of putting our entire retirement fund, that future paycheck we need, into the stock market. Now, before 1978, so the 401k was born in the Revenue Act of 1978. Congressional stroke of the pen, subsection 401k of the tax code is born, and now we have the 401k. Previous to that, and by the 401k, by the way, that's where your employer, through your employer, they sponsor the plan, and then you can contribute to a retirement plan, and your employer can, if they want, contribute as well or match or however they set it up, right? So before 1978, it was very common for employers to have pensions, right? So they would offer pensions to their employees. And they would say, hey, if you work for us, we offer a pension, right? And they could set the terms, and it's what we call a defined benefit plan, okay? Where they are telling you what your benefit is, okay? As opposed to a defined contribution plan, which is they're telling you how much they're going to contribute to it, but making no promises what that will turn into. So if you had a pension, they would say, all right, once you've worked your 5 years, then we guarantee you 20% of your salary once you retire. Once you hit 10 years, then 40% of your salary once you retire. Whatever the terms were, they're telling you how much you're going to make when you retire. So at any given time, you could inquire, and you could say, hey, how much have I earned? And you say, oh, if you were to go work for someone else right now, when you retired, we'd still pay you, 20% of what you're making here now. And so these companies were writing huge blank checks to their employees. But that's okay. They were doing well, and they planned on it, and they didn't have turnover. Why would you ever go work somewhere else? That was back in the day when your employee would work for you for their entire career. They'd be the same place for 30, 40 years. That's unheard of nowadays. And in large part probably because of this. So what happened is, first off, between the 50s and the 70s, when these plans were really popular, and then in the 70s they started going out of style, in 80s into the 80s, and even now there's just a handful left. But the life expectancy rate increased significantly, okay? Which meant that all these companies had these huge liabilities, right? They had done their math and like, okay, life expectancy is 70 years old or whatever it was. And so if people retire at age 65, and they live on average to 70, I'm making these numbers up, but we've got 5 years that we have to fund. There are going to be some that don't last that long, or some that retire later, and there are going to be some that die later, but they've got these actuaries who are telling them, okay, no problem, we can fund this. And so that was part of their budget. But when people started living 6, 8 years longer, that meant 6, 8 years per person that they had to fund their entire retirement at a guaranteed rate, which was huge. In fact, in 2018, when Sears declared bankruptcy, Sears Roebuck, they attributed this $300 million a year in pensions that they had to pay for why they just couldn't stay in business anymore. I mean, imagine if you wake up on January 1st and you know that the first $300 million of profit you make isn't profit. It goes to these employees who've been retired for years, right? It makes it hard to be successful as a business. Well, and that's why when 401ks became popularized, these companies, they really seized on it. They loved the idea, because instead of telling the employee, hey, this is how much you're going to make during retirement and we'll guarantee it for as long as you live, they're saying, hey, this is how much we're going to contribute. So we're going to, and they said, imagine this. Instead of paying $80,000 a year for as long as they live at some point in the future, you're going to pay $3,000 now or $6,000 now or $10,000 a year or whatever it is, and then never pay again. That's something you can budget for. And it also shifted the burden of retirement from the employer to the employee. And so the employers, they thought this was great because not only are they spending a lot less money, but they're spending it now and then never spending it again. They don't have these unfunded liabilities in the future of some unknown amount. And now, they're teaching self-reliance to the employees. You can say, hey, you're responsible for your own retirement, but I'm going to give you a jump start. I'm going to match your 401k. Every dollar you put in up to $6,000, I'm going to match 100%, right? Now the matches have gotten worse over time too, but the employers thought it was awesome. They got a deduction for the contribution. The employees thought it was great because they got a deduction for their contribution as well. And so that we just kind of fell for this great scam. Hey, we're all going to put our money into the tax code. My employer is telling me it's a good thing to do. Well, it benefits the employer greatly. It did not benefit the employee, but they thought it did because they got the deduction. They saw their account growing, and they got, they see, oh, instead of 80 grand a year, I've got 300,000 in my account right now. But that's a lump sum. So anyway, that's what ended up happening. And now, instead of having a guaranteed salary when you retire, you've got this growing account based on contributions, and here's the kicker. We want it to grow while it's in there, so we're going to stick it in mutual funds. Why do we stick it in mutual funds? Number one, there's prohibited transactions that prohibit you from, these are government-imposed transactions. When they created the rule, they said you cannot invest it in anything that would immediately benefit yourself. So you can't invest in your own home, your own business, etc. You can invest in other people's homes and investment properties. If you have a self-directed, you can invest it in other people's businesses, like in stocks, but you can't invest it in your own stuff, okay? And so people are like, well, let's stick our money in the stock market. Now, why was that the recommendation? Because the same people who promoted the 401k, by the way, when the government wrote the 401k, that's not, this way I've described it and the way it works now, that's not what was contemplated. But you got some smart people who were in the financial planning industry who thought, hey, we can actually sell the mutual funds we're already selling. We can do it through this new section of the tax code in this creative way, and now people are going to be incentivized to put their money in my program. They can get a tax deduction when they spend money with me, and then I get to manage their money. I got more money under management, and I make money whether they make money or not. And so people started putting all of their retirement into the stock market, which is insane. It's insane. We're going to go stick the money we need for our future in something as volatile as the stock market, where there are no guarantees. The only guarantees are you're going to get your contribution when you contribute, your financial planner is going to make money, and then when you retire, you're going to pay taxes. Those are the only guarantees. And you're going to pay taxes on 100% of the money. So let's look at mutual funds a little bit closer. I want to share with you 5 truths about the stock market that you probably did not know. And I know I'm using mutual funds and stock market interchangeably. Mutual funds are made up of a combination of stocks and bonds, right? So mutual funds have a huge stock market component. You're just diversifying yourself to minimize losses, but you're also diversifying yourself out of significant gains. But I digress. 5 truths about the stock market. Number 1, every 9.875 years, the stock market corrects by 43%. Okay? So when you watch this graph, and it's slowly going up, right? It goes up slowly, and then it declines sharply, and then you have to earn it again. On average, since the 19th century, so over 100 years, on average, every 9.875 years, the stock market corrects by 43%. Now, that means if your retirement is in the stock market, you better not retire either right before or right after a stock market correction, and you better not be retired when the stock market corrects, or your retirement savings gone. So you better, in other words, you can't retire if every 9.875 years it's correcting by 43%. What are you going to do? 3 years into retirement, all of a sudden your income gets cut in half? You don't have time anymore for that to recover. That's scary. I went to law school in the University of Illinois. And I remember in 2009, I was in my last year of law school, and I had a law professor. We were close. He comes in one day. It was a legal clinic I was in, and he was just distraught. We could all tell. We said, "Professor, what's wrong?" And he was like, "I was planning on retiring in 2 years." but my retirement account, my 401k, just took a hit by 50%, right? He lost 50% of the value of his retirement account almost overnight. This is in 2009, right? So you remember what happened in 2007, 2008, 2009 with the mortgage crisis and the bank failures and all that. Well, the stock market took a huge hit. It took a long time to recover. And he didn't retire 2 years later. He retired, let's see, it's been, I think it was about 7 years later, I got notice on Facebook that he was finally retiring. And it wasn't the retirement that he had hoped for. Don't let that be you. Don't stick all your money somewhere where it could be gone in an instant. Okay, that's truth number one. Truth number two, when we take into account the growth and those consistent dips, the Dow Jones in its 124-year history, so from May 1896 to May 2020, averaged a rate of return of 5.30%. Year-over-year average rate of return, right? So these mutual funds, you hear people talking about the 12% mutual fund. I mean, yeah, it's possible that it earns 12% in a year, but it's not earning 12% year over year. The Dow Jones, which is, one of the indices of overall stock market growth, 5.30%. The S&P 500, it hasn't been around as long, but in its 63 years of history, 3.45% average growth. That's scary, right? That doesn't even beat inflation in some years. So why are we sticking all our money somewhere where the average growth is between 3.45 and 5.30%? That's insane, especially when the average growth is not the same. That's truth number three, right? What the stock average, if it averages 5.3% year over year over year, that's not what you're getting. That's completely different, and you're behind. Because you're going through these ups and downs, you're earning on the low number and you're losing on the big number. So even though the stock may average 5.3, if you take your beginning number and your end number, you subtract and divide by the numbers in between, you're not getting 5.3. Let me give you an example. Let's say you buy $100 of Amazon stock on Monday. Okay, your stock's worth $100. On Tuesday, that Amazon stock increases by 50%. It goes up by 50%. Hey, that's great. You've now got a $150 stock, right? On day 3, it decreases by 50%. So it loses 50% of its value. Now you're at $75. You've lost 25% of your money. But what was the average growth of the stocks? 0. It was flat. 50% plus negative 50% equals 0 divided by 2 is 0. Well, what happens if you go down first? You start with 100, you go down to 50 because you lost 50%. It goes up by 50%, you're at 75. It's still flat, you still lost 25%. So when you look at that statement and your broker is telling you our stocks averaged this much, do the math yourself, okay? Because there's a big difference between the average and what your actual growth was, and you're behind, okay? That's truth number 3. Truth number 4, another scary thing about what that average actually means. Forbes did an estimate of the real cost of mutual funds through a broker, and they estimated that between 3.17 and 6.22% of your growth is eaten up in investment advisor fees. And I should rephrase that. It's not of your growth, because they get paid even if you don't grow. So it's not like if you see a negative year, they chip in a little bit or they don't make any money. No, they still make money, right? So on a good year, your growth is reduced by that amount. On a bad year, your losses are compounded, because when you hear about financial planners talk about how much money they have under management, that's how much they're making money on every year, regardless of how the stock market does. Which brings us to another scary thought. Your financial planner is supposed to be advising you as to the best way to do with your money, which stocks or which mutual funds to go into, right? And you've heard the old adage, buy low and sell high. But is that what your financial planner is telling you to do? Have you ever consulted with a financial planner and they said, you know what, don't buy, wait? No, because what the financial planner's advice is, buy now and sell never. It's always a good time to buy. And then you always want to hold on to it long term. Why? Because they get paid no matter what. You pull your money out when it's high and you sell, and then you buy again when it's low. They're going to lose money while your money is not in the stock market, while they're not managing it. So take that into account. By the way, a lot of these costs, the 3.7 to 6.22%, those are not disclosed. The law only requires that certain of them that the broker is only required legally to disclose some of them. For example, there's something called cash drag, okay? And that is, it's just a reality of the situation. The brokerage company, they have to pay their people, and they have to pay their rent, and they have to keep the lights on, and they have to, they have overhead, they're marketing, right? Where does that money come from? All of the money they have, it's coming from people investing. So let's say they've got $1 billion money under management. They don't have $1 billion invested. Some of that they're using for their operational expenses, okay? So if they keep 10% of money under management, just making a number up, in cash to use for operations, then the gains that you experience on 100% of your money is only with 90% of it invested. That's what we call cash drag, because now your 90% has to work even harder for you to earn money. So if you invest $100 through your broker, but they're only actually investing 90, then for you to see a 5% rate of return, in other words, for you to get to 105, that 90 has to do a lot better than 5%. So that's another scary thing. Now, truth number 5. This kind of brings it all home. Your retirement account is your future paycheck. During your working years, you can go get a second job, you can renegotiate your salary, you can quit your job and find a better job. There's all sorts of things you can do to earn more. During your retirement years, you could do the same thing. You could go get a job if you wanted, if your retirement's not enough, but no one wants to do that. During your retirement years, you want to be able to spend your time how you want. And you can't renegotiate your paycheck. It's whatever you've accumulated during your accumulation years. So why in the world are we sticking all of this money, our future paycheck, in a vehicle where it could be gone? It's volatile. We don't know what's going to happen to it. If you were to apply for a job and your employer were to tell you, hey, I'll offer you a job, but there's one condition, that paycheck, we're going to stick it in the stock market every Friday. And then a couple Fridays from there, you can cash out and you just get what you get, right? Is that something you would agree to? No way. You got bills to pay. Heck, if that's something you would agree to, why aren't you doing it? Why don't you stick 100% of your paycheck now in the stock market? Why? Because that's insane. And yet we're sticking 100% of our future paycheck in the stock market. I do not understand it. I get why it happened. I get the evolution from pensions to 401ks and financial planners being clever, but why are we still drinking this Kool-Aid? We should not be. Call me. I've got better drinks here. We will feed you everything but Kool-Aid. You can drink whatever you want, okay? But really, call me. I'll give you a free consultation. We'll walk you through some great alternatives. I'll answer all your questions, and we guarantee you that you'll spend less than us than you'll save in taxes in your first year. So like us, subscribe, ring that bell. That's a bell that can be unrung, by the way. Anyway, share this, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. My name is Zach Perry. It's been a pleasure being with you. May your fortune be with you always.